Hello friends, thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
All right. Hello and welcome, everybody. And thank you always for your willingness to join us and to be part of the fellowship of this broadcast. We're so grateful to you, and we just thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And tonight we have both Brett Thomas and Noble George on with us, and we're going to be covering some of the Mystery Babylon and also talking about the EMF and wherever spirit will lead, that's where we're going to go. But uh, Brett, how are you, brother?
I'm doing okay, my brother. I'm doing all right. I'm looking forward to tonight. I'm finishing up the volume 3. It's difficult, but I'm getting it. Hopefully by next month. Actually, next month I'll start talking about it and bringing that into conversation. So I'm so excited.
Looking forward to it. Did you decide on title?
Pretty much. I have to it's kind of once I'll let it come out next week or next month. How about that? Let's surprise everybody. It'll be a big burst. Fun. But I think I do have a title, and I think I just have to kind of get it through and get it in the copyright and get it into the publishing arena. So that will be this next month. So I'm excited. It should probably, in my opinion, I think it's my favorite one. It's had the most work, probably about 5 years in the making. So I think it'll fill in a lot of gaps here, and I think it'll be very meaningful and very good discussions will come out of it.
Awesome. Wow. Well, yeah, we'll go into it a little bit more, but let's bring Noble on. Noble, are you there, brother?
Hey, yes, Noble. I am. Hi, Zen. Hi, Brett. Hi, everybody.
Well, thanks for joining us and taking time out of hanging out in Hawaii and paradise and all the beauty of that area.
I know it's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Oh, how's it in Chicago, Brett?
Actually, it's very nice. Very at night, you get a nice breeze that comes in, so it's like a 50, 60 degrees at night, and it's like a very peaceful time in the evening. The day is fine too. It's about the 70s during the day, so it's almost Hawaii-like, but without the beautiful scenery and beaches.
Oh man, you guys are making this place sound too good. We've got traffic like nowhere else. I'm telling you, for such a small island. So it's not really truly paradise, but we make the most of it, guys.
So you're still dealing with the suburban sprawl, huh?
Oh man, there's no way around it. The island's so small, and there's more people coming here to live. There's going to be a point where it'll be oversaturated. I think it already is, but oh well. Price you pay for paradise, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How about with regard to the fire and all of that? How did that affect as far as the native people and has there been a movement out or some people leaving, or how did that affect where you guys are?
Well, the fire was on the island of Maui. We're on Oahu.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. But again, without setting up any flags, they've pretty much cordoned off the area. Nobody's been able to get in there. I think they've been clearing up the place, and it's just it's just sad to see what's happening, because I think a lot of the people that perished were owners, and I think they're trying to, certain elite groups are trying to get the land for their own purposes and whatnot. And so did it cause people to leave? No, not really. I mean, people's life is still going on. I'm sure it changed some families on Maui and surrounding islands that are relatives, but other than that, it's just something that's under the bridge already. Hopefully, I guess the main plan is we'll let it happen, and then people will forget about it later, and we'll just move on. So that's what I'm thinking. But again, tragedy can strike any place. I mean, paradise in California, Lahaina in Maui, and now who knows what's next. So just make sure your roof is, what a country. Just make sure your roof is blue.
Yeah, right.
What does that
Brett,
do?
did you want to comment?
Well, blue is because any house that had blue roofs on Maui were not affected, or of intense, were not affected by the DEW, the direct energy weapons.
Mm-hmm.
So blue
Really?
seems to be the color that the laser cannot pick up on, I'm guessing. So that's the color of choice now. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of the blood on the doorpost, don't it?
Mm.
If you think about it.
Interesting. Yeah. But the blood on the doorpost was God's divine judgment. This is man's manipulated judgment. You know, totally different. So I'll go with the red anytime.
Right.
Yeah, and it's crazy that they, as far as paradise in California, all that, that was the same guy that was overseeing all that was there in Hawaii. Yeah, so that's another weird, strange thing. But Brett, let's go back to you and your book, brother. Anything you want to share on it? Just like content. Why is it your favorite with all the work you have done?
The new one?
Yeah.
It's because the first 2 volumes were more of a comparison from ancient times to today, and it was good. I think it's good reading. I enjoy that whole concept of trying to find a parallel between the two. This one is a little bit different, and I believe it fills in a lot of gaps because you could only talk about the past compared to today for so long, and I feel this part has a lot of those questions that were never answered in those first 2 volumes, and just a lot of questions out there that pertain to this parallel indirectly. In other words, let's talk about more about what happened after the flood. Okay, I talk about it a little bit, but in more relevant to today and what is going on and where this whole issue between the post-flood world at the beginning of what happened after the flood means to us today. In other words, I don't just use use parallels and say, yeah, this happened before the flood or after the flood, and now it's happening today. I basically trace it all the way back, all the way to the Garden of Eden back, and start, and it's like almost like the serpent seed line coming all the way from there to now, and that's the difference about it. It kind of, I go through the centuries, and that's what's fascinating to me, because again, it's almost fills in a number of little missing pieces to what I never stated before.
Wow, that's very, very exciting.
It is. I believe. I mean, to me, it is. Okay, and again, that's just me. But I think Zen and Noble probably like it. But hopefully, a lot of people will like it. But it is these little bits and tidbits that I've tried to assemble together to make the present world really, really make sense once you see that. And I'm not talking the Merovingians and going back to, and tracing that seed line. I mean, there's been books already written about that, and I understand that. And this is more of our society and our culture in general, not just a distinct line of serpent seeds and et cetera trying to rule the government. This is more about how our society and our culture and such ended up the way it is now. That's what I really tried to push into these books.
Oh, that's fantastic, brother. And we'll go to you here in just 1 second, Noble. But I did want to comment because this is something that I wanted to do when in writing the Great Contest 3, which is the Sons of Anak, and I wanted to also trace, because I ended the Great Contest 2 with how the serpent seed survived the flood, and shared that whole story which you and I have gone into about Noah being instructed to take Nama as wife, and that's how the serpent seed was allowed to have continuance, and then the whole theme of Ham seeing the nakedness of his father and having slept with the wife of Noah and bringing forth Canaan as a result of that fornication, that would make Canaan, predominantly serpent seed. And that's so, yeah, I would go from there up to modern times. So it's good to see that you've done that, brother. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you on that and covering all of that. But Noble, would you care to comment, brother? And also, if you would, tell us how it was that you came to knowledge on the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent.
Oh gosh, I don't think you have enough time on the show for that.
Yeah.
No, again, a lot of the things have been brought to attention ever since Lisa started listening to you and saying, "Honey, you got to listen to this guy Zen, man. He's crazy." I said, no, she didn't say that. No.
Crazy good.
Yeah, well, it's crazy informative. That's what it is, because there's so much information that you're imparting on the people. And so again, that was never on my my sights, the enmity and the serpent seed situation. Only then and after then, listening to you, did it become around to again the forefront of our focus and saying, "Wow, this is different. This is interesting. Let's see if there's more to this." So, so the understanding becomes a little bit more clear. And so even like reading your book, Brett, they have a number of resources also that, nice bibliography that opens up, the talk about how Cain, and Havel, Cain and Abel were actually, again, potentially not what we always thought they were, children of Adam and Eve. So again, a lot of light being shed, and so it's just a continual study now. And so,
and the serpent, right?
Yeah, and then the Nakash, yeah, that was there. So again, a lot of things to be learned, and it's an ongoing process because it's a lot of information. Your writings, then Brett's writing. I mean, and then just trying to put things together. And then now I come in with the Hebrew, and I'm reading the Hebrew, and I'm thinking, wow, wait a minute, this is different. Because from what I've read, heard from you, Zen, and Brett, I've heard another interpretation of Genesis chapter 4, verse 1 and verse 1, and in the Hebrew, you're going to get this word called, it's in Hebrew, it's pronounced et. And when the word et comes into play, it's used twice in chapter 4, verse 1. And it's interesting because it's a direct object marker. It's not pronounced. It's not part of the translation. It's just letting you know what the direct object is. And so they use that, in the actual passage. And what's interesting is that from a Jewish professor that I studied under, he says the translation is actually different from what you'll read from the Bible. And I'm saying, okay, well, which version? He says, well, most of them. And so the way it should be read, and I'm actually turning there now so I can be a little bit more accurate with this.
Awesome.
Is, hello, where is it? Give me a second. Genesis chapter 4. For everybody listening, Genesis chapter 4, verse 1. Okay. And it says here, Vaha Adam Yada. And Adam knew, and Yada is that very intimate word that could talk about actually what a husband and a wife know of each other. And here's your first et. Et Hava. So Adam knew intimately who? A direct object marker says Eve. Okay, Hava, his wife, Ishto. Okay, then the next one. And then now, it's like, so he knew Eve, intimately, and she conceived, which is Vatahar, Vataleg, and bore who? Here's your second et. Et is the direct object marker Cain, okay? Cain. And here we go. She says, and I got to go back. There's 3 times Et is used in this one passage, one verse. And it says, Vatomer Kaniti. And she said, Hava said, I have acquired, and which is one of the translations of Cain's name, what? Ish. Okay, and then here we go with the third Et. Et Yahweh or Yahvah. Yod He Vav He, God. Now, in the English, they actually translate this third Et as a preposition, from. And that's true. You could actually use Et as a preposition. It's mentioned that way as well. But in all seriousness, they're just trying to smooth out the English from the Hebrew. But my professor says, no. What Hava thought and knew of from the Genesis 3:15 passage was that when she conceived and bore Cain, she says, I have acquired a man, and she believed that this man was God, was to be the coming God or the Messiah. So,
angel of the Lord.
Or the angel of the Lord. Yeah, that's how some versions is translated in your book as well. So the from actually does not belong there. I have acquired a man who Yod He Vav He, God. And that's a different translation from what I've read and what I've studied on. I'm thinking, wow, this is very interesting. So there's so much to unpack when you read the Hebrew. I mean, it could be from God, but I'm thinking, I think her thinking was that, yes, I would be the chosen one to be the mother of the Messiah that would come, who would be God. And that's her thinking there. And now
that's very interesting.
Yeah. And it follows with the consistency of using that direct object marker Et, which is Aleph Tav. And everybody knows Aleph Tav is like the beginning, the end, the Alpha, the Omega, So another way to point out that, hey, guess what? I believe Cain is the God I'm supposed to have. Well, little does she know, she had to wait about 5,500 years, right? A little early, right? So yeah.
You
Right.
You want me to comment a little on that?
Yeah. So again, this is.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Brett. Go ahead.
Okay, I believe that's an awesome observation. I really, it's always good to learn, and when I'm talking with everybody around, I always learn something new or try to learn something new every exchange, and it's nice because it's a good feeling because it helps solidify what we think about and we try to research. So that was very good, Noble. I like that. Very good. Yeah. I believe some of the things that I found in the research is that, and I'm sure Zen will back me up on this probably, but when she saw Cain, he was illuminated like an angel, and he had a shining countenance, and I believe that since God gave those prophecies out that a seed of her shall eventually be the Messiah, she probably saw the angelic appearance on Cain and first thought, oh, here he is. He's right here. Cain has got to be the Messiah because he looks like an angel of the Lord.
Right. And I think in your book also you mentioned that he grew. I mean, he was like not just your typical baby. He stood up, picked up a blade of grass, gave it to his mom. I mean, that's not unheard of because when you read about Noah, when he was born, he stood up and he was speaking and he had what was it?
Woolly white hair.
Woolly white hair, and he was dark skinned and his eyes were glowing like nothing you've ever seen before. And so I'm not going to discount the fact that what happened to Cain, his illumination and all that was probably what it was, it was, and if he's from the serpent seed, Zen, which you opened that can of worms for Lisa and me, it's kind of like, whoa, how can you discount anything that the supernatural can do when they intermingle with the natural? So again, anything can happen when it comes to the supernatural world. And so yeah, very interesting. And so I'm learning, and I'm not making any judgment calls because you know what? there's still so much more to learn, and I'm not going to put myself in that situation because there's much more to study. Maybe you guys are more seasoned in it than I am because I'm relatively new to the topic, but I just want to learn more, and then I'll draw my conclusions later when I get all the information I can get.
Absolutely, and that's the
Go
way
ahead,
it should be. I was just going to say that's the way everybody should be skeptical and have a healthy dose of skepticism when going into any topic, but one has to always be also open-minded to receive new information and to have new possibility affect change. And because again, we don't know everything and we're all learning together. I want to ask you another question, but I'm going to get Brett a chance to comment here. Brett?
Yeah, another interesting thing, Noble, that you said is where Eve said, I have a man, acquired a man,
Yes.
an angel. And the man part is another fascinating thing, which you talked about, is because he didn't really appear to be like a typical baby. He was so far advanced in his time, which again agrees with the Bible, but it also agrees with maybe he was something more. Why would she call him a man and not a baby if he was just a regular human baby? And that's another fascinating thing, in my opinion, about that. Yeah, I think I totally agree with you, Zen. I think it's very important that people keep an open mind and not be willingly ignorant, as the Bible talks about there in the New Testament, because that's where you learn. People shouldn't be afraid to kind of take a look at this. I mean, again, look at some of these things that you see, like you talked about, Noble. You look at the original Hebrew. I'm not an expert, but still, people can look at it, look at the strong letters and strong words for each individual word that you see, and you can see that it's not always exactly what these translations are telling us. And because remember, even back in the time of King James, they had preconceived notions, and a lot of these translators kind of had to make it fit with what they have been taught over the years and what they think makes sense and stuff. And if they serpent seed, we can't. Fallen terrestrial angels, we can't parade anything like that around. We gotta have to twist it or make it, interpret it so it doesn't exactly say those things, so it fits, right?
You're right. So true. So true. And I gotta make. Go ahead, then.
Oh, sorry. I was going to just ask you this, and then you can comment on that as well. But I wanted to ask you, since you are a scholar of the Hebrew and the Greek, after being introduced to this topic and looking at the story of, the temptation and the fall of Adam and Eve, what you thought about, the Hebrew, even, like the words touch, and which has included in it in the definition to lie with the woman, zera, and fruit being connected to offspring and children and progeny, even to eat, having in its connotation sexual pleasures. What you thought about, and did all that kind of stand out to you as you were examining the story in the original Hebrew context?
Great question. I've got to preface something because my knowing, and I'm not a scholar, but I know my Hebrew and Greek well enough to be dangerous, I guess. But the Masoretic text, which is the Hebrew written by the Masoretes in the 6th, 7th century AD, is the de facto or the default text that most of the English Bibles use, if not all the Bibles. And from what I've actually been reading about recently is that the Masoretic text is a text that comes from the oral tradition or the rabbinic tradition, Pharisaical tradition, and so many names for it, but you pretty much know what I'm talking about. These were the guys that were totally against Yeshua when he came into the world, incarnated. So my reading of this Masoretic text, and which is and in the block form, this is what you see your Hebrew now. And a lot of people will say, well, that's not the original Hebrew, and that's correct. The original Hebrew is the Paleo Hebrew, the pictures, right?
Right, pictographic.
The pictographic Hebrew. That is the original Hebrew. And you know what? From what I've been studying, and I'm actually going to be doing a teaching on this, if not this Saturday, maybe the next class on the Hebrew Hawaiian channel on YouTube. But from what I'm gathering, when the rabbinic sages were putting together the Old Testament in this Masoretic form, they put the vowel pointers in there. Remember, original Hebrew has no vowel points. It's all consonants. They were able to put what vowels they wanted to meet their agenda, to meet their traditions. And so now we're talking about something that's already slighted. It's not the original. I mean, if you have an agenda, guess what you're going to do? You're going to make it fit. Kind of like what we were talking about earlier. People will make things fit their theology. They won't just go with what the Bible says. And so with this reading of the Masoretic text, I actually now need to step back and say, wait a minute. I could be reading rabbinical tradition into this passage, and then that may not be the true saying. It may not warrant it. And so I'm kind of like, wow, wait a minute. What I'm actually doing now is studying textual criticism. And I'm studying it from this one guy. I got his book. It's Emmanuel Tove, a Hebrew scholar now, okay? And he's actually the one that opened up my eyes to the fact that the Masoretic text is a translation. It is a translation, but it could be a one-sided translation coming from the rabbinic tradition. You got to be careful. And he gives examples, which is what I'm going to be teaching on in the near future. And so I'm thinking, gosh, man, here we go. Got to go back to studying again and researching. But isn't that what it's all about, right, Brett? Zen?
Absolutely.
Right.
I mean, we don't have the answers. We're trying to get the answers, but guess what? We come across a potential answer and find out, oh man, I got to do more digging and more studying and more researching because this may be tarnished in some form and fashion. And so
maybe
more than likely, right? But no, I'm again offering some some light that, hey, look, the Bibles we have are not totally that bad, but you got to understand there could be some, mistranslation or some misinformation being given so that certain agendas can be brought forth.
Yeah, almost assuredly.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. But I don't want to discourage people because one of the questions that Lisa gets a lot when she's doing the show with you, Zen, is what's the best Bible that I can get today? That's the most original and organic one that has the least amount of scribal errors and traditional or cited input and agendas being again added onto it. And that's a good question because for many of the people out there, I would love to have that Bible too. And I'm thinking, shucks, right now we're not getting it. Not in whether it's if you're a King James fan, there's a lot of problems with that. And NIV, NASB, all the versions, all the English translations are based upon the Old Testament's based upon the Masoretic text. So be forewarned, the Masoretic text is not the original, though I have studied the fact that going back to the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Hebrew, which was in the Paleo, is a good translation. And then you got the Dead Sea Scrolls as well, and some of that stuff goes against the Masoretic text. So again, the best Bible will be the one that's going to be coming forth, by someone that's got the nuts the craziness to do it, because there's a lot of things you have to circumnavigate and go through because you're going to be changing a lot of traditions, and a lot of people may not take that very kindly and again, but for those that are really seeking the truth, this is an endeavor that maybe somebody might want to take up one day, and put in the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Septuagint in there.
A lot of times I look at it. I look at it in a kind of funny way. When we look at all these things that we're doing, me, Zen, and we're just trying to understand the world and wade through all of this, wade through all the worldly things that have come at us with these new versions and etc. And it's almost like eating a piece of chicken, and it's like, because I always compare it to it, but it's kind of a funny way to compare it. But you can't just bite into the piece, because you can hit a bone and there's bones around, there's bones inside. So you kind of have to kind of search around for the meat, you know what I mean? Subtly. You can't really just bite in, or you can't eat the whole thing whole. You got to kind of search around and then pick out the quality that's on that piece that you're eating. And that's kind of what we do when we do these things. Sometimes when we have to look at these number of these alternative texts, but you know what? A lot of them aren't really too good, right, Zen? I mean, we can't use everything that we find out there. There's Gnostic Gospels. There's things that we have to question ourselves. And I believe, again, God gives us the Holy Spirit. He gives us the gifts of discernment. We can do it. You just have to have a little bit of a critical mind and just kind of say, okay, is this trying to lead me in a pagan direction, or it's trying to lead me the opposite of God? That's where you get your understanding and saying, you know what? There may be some good information, possibly, or historical, or something that's relevant in these texts, even like the Zohar. Okay. But you have to kind of see where it leads you. And that's where you take as a grain of salt in some of the things that it might push. So that's where you have to kind of weed through and search for the meat on a lot of these ancient texts. Do you agree with that, Zen?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely, I go by the whole theme, and I definitely believe the canon to be inspired and prophetic as well, and I use that as my foundation. But out of the mouths of two or three witnesses shall the truth be established. And so, when it comes to the extra biblical texts and manuscripts, other manuscripts that I read, I always keep that the confirming witness of that in mind whenever looking at or accepting or teaching something that I come across and will affirm as truth. I never just go with one witness, especially when it counters much of what I've come to understand with regard to truth. As it's been established in the canonical and then a lot of the extra biblical texts, because a lot of what is taught in mainstream churchianity, in my opinion, is not the truth. And so that's why, Brett, you and I, we've written about serpent seed so much, and Dr. Joy as well, because, it is one of the skeleton keys, in my opinion, to unlocking so much that is still misunderstood with regard to the parable, the tares of the field, the goat and the sheep, the harvest separation, all that. Let both grow together until the time of the end. The enemy snuck into the garden, sowed the tares. All of that, all of that we see in Matthew 13, and Isaiah 14 even speaks about Lucifer, Hallel, being the abominable branch, and that prepares slaughter for his children, the seed of the evildoers, that they not rise and populate and control the cities and all of that kind of stuff. But I did want to bring up one other thing and ask both of you this as well, with regard to the question that was asked Lisa as to what a particular text that you might read, or a biblical version or something of that nature. I get asked that question as well. And I like to refer people to the study of the Aramaic Targum, which is a translation of what was the original Hebrew. And, the Aramaic being the language that was restored to Ezra and that he had written in brought forth a lot of what had been destroyed with the destruction of the temple. But wanted to ask both of you if you had studied, looked at, and examined the Targum, because especially with Genesis 4:1, there's portion there that has been left out of all of the other translations, and that this one predates, the King James by 2,000 years, and even the Septuagint by a couple hundred years. But in Genesis 4:1, it says, "And Adam knew Hava his wife, who had desired the angel." And then we have the semicolon there, and then which is a separate thought. And then she conceived and bare Cain, and she said, "I have acquired a man, the angel of the Lord."
The angel of the Lord.
Yeah. One other thing that I'll bring up, and then I'll get both of you to comment. But when we look at even what Johann Eisenmenger, who put out a book in the 1700s, which was so dangerous that they gathered all the copies and destroyed it. And after that, he was so heartbroken that he died. But 40 years later, somebody had preserved and saved a copy of his work and brought it forth. But in that traditions of the Jews, it says, "And Adam knew his wife, who had conceived by the angel Samael, was pregnant and bare Cain, whose resemblance was like the upper creatures," the heavenly angels, the seraphic angels specifically, because in my opinion, they had a reptilian, resemblance, countenance, and that was also said to be of Cain. But let me just finish this one passage, and then I'll turn it over to both of you. And then, like the upper creatures and not like the lower, and she said, "I have got the man, the angel of the Lord." Then Lewis Ginsburg, last passage that I'm going to read, in the Legends of the Jews, he says of this verse as well that Cain's descent from Satan, who is the angel Samael, was revealed in his seraphic appearance. And seraphic, of course, shiny, and the Nakash we know to be a shining one. And seraphic specifically is dragon-like, serpent-like, reptilian. Sarah meaning snake, and again having this snake-like appearance. And then at his birth, the exclamation was wrung from Eve, "I've gotten a man through an angel of the Lord," which, in some of the texts again, where it says, "Who had desired the angel," Hava having desired the angel. And again, I believe that was Samael, that as it says in 2 Corinthians, Paul says that the serpent beguiled her and impregnated her, and that's why she was not a chaste virgin. Yeah. And so go ahead, Brett, did you want to comment first, and then we'll go to Noble?
Yeah, one thing that, and Noble maybe can, if you have a chance to study this, Noble, the original Hebrew, I'd be just curious to find out what you'd say about it. But I believe that looking at the strong numbers for that Genesis 4:1, that I have found that another meaning of the word "knew" is understanding, which is basically, of course, they so many point to the "knew" meaning, okay, he had relations, he knew her intimately. Okay, yeah. But again, another meaning which I found that "knew" could mean understanding, which is pretty much what, I knew he did it, or I knew this. So it's pretty much on that side of it. And that supports what you're saying, Zen, and what we're writing about is that Adam maybe understood, knew what was going on with Eve, and that she was about to bear a child. Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, when she becomes pregnant, he's going to know something is up, and that is basically what I think another meaning of that word "knew" could actually be, because it doesn't mean that he, this was something that happened long time after the garden and after the fall, and then he decided to have relations with her, and then she bore Cain. That's what I've been always taught when I've been young. But again, I'm thinking it's more of something that happened not so long after the garden, where he understood, he was figuring out the process of what's going on here, is that she was about to have a child because of what happened in the garden. And then it goes on to where she exclaims, oh yeah, I have a man who comes from an angel. He's an angel of the Lord.
Mm-hmm. Noble, did you want to comment, and then I'll speak again?
Okay. That's cool, Brett. What you're saying, I'm thinking, yeah. Adam was probably saying, "Oh my gosh, what's the matter with this one? How she's getting fat all of a sudden? Why is she grouchy? Well, she's nauseated. Why is she always throwing up? Oh, man, this is all new to me. God, what's going on? God, what's happening to her? Yeah, I'm sure that could be a whole part of the knowing. It's very interesting.
Understood that the serpent got her.
Yeah. Well, he might have even been there and witnessed it and said, "Oh, that's how it's done." All right, my turn. You know what I mean? You never know, right?
Oh yeah.
But a small comment, because I'm going to be teaching on this as well. But on the targums, there are, from what I know, there are two types of targums: the pseudo Jonathan and the Onkelos. And with the Onkelos targums, you got to, again, it's my opinion that one needs to exercise caution when it comes to the Onkelos, because Onkelos is a student, how can I say this, of Akiva, Rabbi Akiva. They're contemporaries in a sense. And Rabbi Akiva, being full-on Jew, full-on rabbinical, pharisaical, the Onkelos targums were written in response to the Septuagint. See, the Christians had this great translation in Greek, because that was the lingua franca, the Koine Greek was the common language, like English is today. And when they got this Septuagint, they're saying, yes, okay, now look, the Messiah is mentioned here because this is the Old Testament, right, in Greek. And it says it right here in this passage, in Isaiah, Zechariah, Hosea. I mean, when the rabbis and the Jewish leaders heard of the arguments that the so-called new group, the Way, or the Christians, were using the Septuagint, they said, well, this Septuagint is not going to work for us because our oral tradition, doesn't line up well. We need to make our own version, and our own version has to line up with our tradition. Because remember, Moshe had the oral tradition. He just never wrote it down, and that's their claim, you know what I mean? Which is a false claim. We all know that. So the Targum, again, is an Aramaic translation, which is a language which was the common language spoken to as well. It was a language that was from the Babylonian exile, and they had to make and fashion their own, how can I say this, translation in lieu of the Septuagint. And what's interesting is that a lot of the passages that are in the Septuagint are not in the Targum, are not mentioned in the Targum, because they don't know what to do with those passages. They took out all the messianic passages because they just don't have an answer for it. That's why they had to create their own. And that the Onkelos is the answer, where, again, all these so-called big name rabbis would eventually say, yep, this is our version, this is the one we're sticking with. The Septuagint is not the version we'll be using, although it is inspired because the Talmud says it is. We're not going to use it. And you kind of scratch your head and say, why? Well, they have their reasons, and it's all because of their traditions that they want to carry throughout. They can't change their ways. They already made their bed. They're stuck in it. And if they turn out, it's going to make them look pretty bad, because now they're going to be changing things that they said was law, just as important as the Mosaic law. Mm-hmm. And so, again, I'm still learning, like we all are. And we're, like you said, Brett, we're trying to navigate through the Gnostic texts and all the other texts. And in this case, even in the Targums, we have to navigate very carefully too, because and not the Jonathan one, but the Onkelos version, because that is a response to the Septuagint. And remember, the Septuagint was written by 72 Hebrew sages or wise men, and Ptolemy, who had it done this way, he asked 72 of them, write the Hebrew and Greek, and I'm going to compare them all and see if you guys are all in line, or you guys have are on the same shelf with your translation. And he said, good job, guys. They're pretty much all the same. And guess what? It was such a good translation that the rabbinical sages, the Pharisees, couldn't use it, because the Christians got a hold of it and said, look at all these messianic passages. Jesus is the Messiah. And you know what they say about that. So
yeah, it's interesting that it kind of goes about what I'm going to be talking about with the modern ways of Cain here in the last part of the book, because it talks about man's interpretation and humanism and human thoughts as compared to God. And that's kind of, in a classical sense, you're talking about it right there, especially with the higher ups and the educated religious elite doing the same thing as we hear in political correctness all around us today. Same thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But way back
yes.
then.
Nothing's changed.
No. And it probably won't, until that's how we have to spot. Again, we have to kind of keep an eye out and spot just to kind of see where they start to direct you and why they are changing around so many things. That's another big thing that I like to talk about in the works.
Well, yeah, absolutely, because the truth, again, even the Bible, the scriptures speak about the lying pen of the scribes, and we see even in we see the word of the Lord removed so much from even what we have of the original. So without a doubt, they removed and have been hiding and trying to hide that Christ was and is Savior, Messiah. And that's, a very important part of scriptures and looking at in my opinion, the ancient translations, and that comes forth. But definitely this idea of the serpent seed, even though it is found there with who had desired the angel, when we look at in the King James, again, all of that is still, in my opinion, preserved within the context of the English translations, and looking at the original Hebrew as far as the beguilement of Eve, and how the temptation to eat the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, how does that lead to her pregnancy and there being enmity between what was told to the serpent, his seed, and her seed? I mean, if there's not some kind of consequence and result of this particular action, being that children would be born, and one would be the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. Noble had mentioned that Adam had repeated the act. I absolutely believe that that is what had occurred, and as Paul references in 2 Corinthians, that the serpent beguiling Eve, that word expatio in the Greek is, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but means wholly seduced. And again, the only way that a woman who is wholly seduced could lose her chastity, her virginity, is if she is sexually corrupted. And then having and bearing a child, which is the consequence of her eating this fruit, being the mother of all the living, that she would bear both the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, that there would be enmity between both. And in the Targum, it also says in verse 4:2, and then she added to bear from her husband Adam Abel. And so, those kind of things. And so, yeah, I'll turn it back over to you guys and get you both to comment. We know that we are close to break as well, but we'll we'll take break, about 3 minutes before the top of the hour.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Noble, do you want to say something? Or you want me?
No. Go ahead.
Couple interesting things I want to throw in there on piggybacking on Zen. What he was saying is, it's so interesting. If people really kind of take an open ear and an open eye out for some of the things that is being said here and written about and interpreted, it's fascinating, because a lot of these questions and things that you read in the Bible are seemingly being answered. Like, why would God punish Eve in a number of these ways that have to deal with her conception and giving birth and all these things that have to do with that facet of a woman's life? Why? If again, God, why would God? And again, I look at things more rationally. I look at things, okay, it just simply, if it's too complicated, it just, for me, it just doesn't really fit, but if these things follow a train of thought that's rational, okay, if they did something sexual that was sinful, God often punishes measure for measure. So that would be part of the punishment, would be something that has to do with Eve. And if we think about it, we have childbirth here. We don't just have the relations, we have actual punishments that deal with her and bearing children in the future, which is, again, that kind of makes sense. And then another thing we think about is Adam and Eve, as soon as they realize that they have sinned, what did they do? They rushed to cover their private parts. They didn't cover their mouths. They didn't cover their hands because they touched the fruit. They covered that area, which I believe, again, which was a major part of the seduction for both of them.
Right. Yeah, great. Noble, we've got just about 4 minutes if you'd like to comment, and then we can always revisit this when we come back from break.
Oh, yeah, no, great point, guys. And again, this is really a very delicate topic, because there's the translations, and a lot of them are actually very valid. And I'm just trying to say, how can I harmonize this with that and that, to come up with the actual rendering, because we don't have the original autographs. The autographs are the actual writings from the authors that we have in Scripture. We have copies, which are manuscripts, and right now it's kind of like a educated guessing game, trying to put the pieces together and hopefully come up with the true story that happened back then. And it's a tough one. This is a puzzle that will take, I'm sure, time to solve. If not, then when we get to heaven, we can say, God, can you please give me the true story of what happened in the garden? You know what I mean? And we can all sit back and say, oh, I got that one wrong. Oh, I got that one wrong too. Oh, I got that one right. Okay, but it's a very manifold understanding of what happened. And Brett, I think I got a few more minutes. When you mentioned in your book that even Abel could be part of the serpent seed, I reached out to you. I texted you, say, where did you get the sources, your information on that? Because I never saw that perspective before. Cain, yes, serpent seed. Abel, that was a big question mark. So, but then you brought out some points that I'd never noticed before, and I said, oh, that's a very good argument. So
thank you.
That's something I got to go back and look into more. And I did not have enough time to study it in fully, but it's something I'm going to look into, because I want to know. Everybody, I think, in our audience wants to know what happened. And how did it happen? In what order did it happen? Did everybody get beguiled? You know what I mean? Was Cain and Abel actually from Adam? And that's the question that you pose. And I'm thinking, wow, wait a minute. Because what do you say, Brett, in Genesis 5:3, that Seth was made in Adam's image, right?
Mm-hmm. The first one, he noticed that. And he says, finally, I have a child in my image.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, okay, well, wait a minute. Why would the author put that in there unless Cain and Abel were not in his image to begin with? You know what I mean, can you imagine what Adam was thinking? Said, yo, dear, where'd you come from? What fence did you hop over? Because these don't look like me. You know what I mean? So, oh my gosh, conspiracy.
All right, hold on, guys.
All right.
All right, we'll be right back, everybody. Top of the hour, and we'll be back in about 4 minutes. 5
Good
minutes.
one, Noble.
Okay.
You were part.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com. Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
Yeah, that's fine. And so what? They can't hear us. I mean,
We can.
We can hear you.
Hi.
Okay.
Yes, not really.
No, but it's a radio program. They muted us, so I can talk to Brett. And
Yeah,
Zen.
you can talk to Zen and Brett.
I can talk to Brett and Zen
And Justin.
and Justin. Okay. I think we're at the end of the commercial already.
Okay. I do believe so. It looks like it on the stream. Usually we come back on 2 minutes after. So let's hold for 1 more minute and then we'll go live.
Okay.
Just another 30 seconds.
Are you Zen? Are you going through Truth Frequency Radio, or are they gone?
No, I'm not. I did reach out, but I'm not sure exactly what happened.
They can hear you guys.
Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody, and thank you again. Sorry, we were just chit-chatting in the background there and waiting to come back. But I do want to just thank Dayton. I really appreciate you saying what you said, and actually, I should probably just share it with everybody so they know what I'm talking about. Dayton says at Zen Garcia, I'm so grateful to have a brother like you. Even though you don't know me, your travels have helped your dear brother here to have a relationship to the king when I was going to die. Our dad helped me and showed me you years ago. Thanks, bro. You know, it's my great honor. Thank you, brother, for opening yourself to new possibility and actually hearing the things that I, talk about and say. And I've had a lot of really good brothers like Brett and Noble and others, Dr. Joy and Lisa, and so many others that have also expressed and have become confirming witness for the things that I've been talking about, even though I've been, largely attacked and criticized and called a heretic and blasphemer and all the other things. Certainly, I do believe that if we were back, a few hundred years, that I probably wouldn't even be here with all of you because they would have done lynched me or
burned you at the stake.
Burned me at the stake. Yeah, exactly. And so even all of you listening and hearing and opening yourself to these things, I'm sure you have also faced contention, and whether it's from family members or people that you've just tried to talk to, the mainstream churches are not receptive to anything that contradicts the things that they teach. And, they believe that Eve ate an apple and that this apple led to consequentially the downfall of humanity and our being cast out, placed under the authority of death, and here in mortal form, which that doesn't make any sense to me, especially when it clearly shows that the consequences of their actions was that Eve would bear children in sorrow, and that there would be this enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, which can't explain that with an apple. Brett, and then we'll go back to Noah.
That plays out perfectly, Zen, because if you think about it, if there wasn't that enmity that you were talking about, nobody would really care about what you're speaking. And 200 or 300 years ago, they wouldn't be trying to lynch you or burn you at the stake, right? So it's definitely there. It's definitely there.
Yeah, it's contentious for whatever reason. But Noble, care to comment?
Oh gosh, there's so much to comment. I'm reading the live chat, and there's some questions coming through and saying, oh, okay, interesting. What's funny though is that there's so much renditions of what happened in the garden and Eve's giving birth that I think it's safe to say that it was the beginning of the downfall for mankind when they ate of the fruit, when the Nakash beguiled Hava and took it as far as he could, and then they got punished for it. All three of them got punished for it. And it's interesting that the seed, the progeny, those people that have come from Adam and Hava are paying the price. Now, again, it's been imputed into us. We've inherited the sin, but that's just the beginning, because Genesis 6 brings down the Nephilim, and the Nephilim, the Watchers, and then the Watchers begat with the women, and then you got the Nephilim. And I see some questions about, well, is so and so a Nephilim? You got to remember the timeline, guys, in the chat, that Genesis 6 is where the first Nephilim came from, and there are generations of them, and some of them were corrupted, some of them were not pure. How can I say this? Half angelic, half human. There were different mixtures later on.
Earthborn.
Some say, some say quarter this and 3/4 that. Regardless, whenever you have angelic or supernatural DNA fused with a human DNA, that is a hybrid. and the Nephilims began there. And so you just look at the timeline and it says, okay, anything after Genesis 6, verses 1 to 4, now is subject to being Nephilim or having DNA of the Nephilim. And so I know it's just a matter of time before, these so-called opponents of God himself would make their stab at trying to cancel out the bloodline, cancel out the fact that the Mashiach would come and save the day. They all tried, but they couldn't because it was a mystery. And thank God for mysteries that even the angels didn't know about. So that's where I'm at right now. Comment, Zen?
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I will comment on. But Brett, did you want to say something?
No, go ahead, Zen. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna share something with regard to what Noble was talking about, and this goes back to. Actually, somebody had asked a question about Nimrod and how he became a Gibborim. I was just gonna share something that you can find in Jubilees. It says in chapter 9, and he found a writing which former generations had carved on the rock. And he read what was thereon, and he transcribed it and sinned owing to it, for it contained the teaching of the watchers in accordance with which they used to observe the omens of the sun and the moon and the stars in all the signs of heaven. I do think that, the writings of the watchers and how it was embraced and how the children of Ham, the Canaanites, how they also became part of and intermixed and mingled in with what was Og and his bloodline, his progeny, the giants of old. That Og was, the king over 60 cities there in Bashan, in that particular area, and they had built up all these cities that with these high walls. They had, established a stronghold, and this stronghold was in the land that was usurped from Shem by Canaan. And so I do think that it could very well be that as we see with the lesser keys of Solomon and the writings that speak about the Testament of Solomon, how he was able to control the devils and the demons, and that he had power and authority over them, that he even utilized their labor to construct the temple, that there was no tools of iron used. And so it was constructed in a supernatural manner by a lot of what were the children of the fallen angels. And, and so that kind of background, that kind of story. But with regard to Nimrod, what Solomon had done and how he was also, he got involved in, with the occult in controlling the devils and demons. And this is passed on as the Goetia and black magic and the rituals. And they also speak about the lesser and the greater keys of Solomon. There's the Necronomicon, which is a book of magic and rituals that are praying to the Anunnaki, the ancient Sumerian gods. And so, in my work and in my books, I talk about how the Anunnaki, those who from the heavens to the earth came, they are the fallen angels. They are the ones that rebelled and were cast out. The Watchers later joined them in their rebellion. And so they are legion. They are the powers, the principalities, the rulers of darkness, spiritual wickedness in high places, that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but, these angelic beings, and that they are vying right now with the angels of the Most High over the spirits, the souls of humanity, and whether we will be numbered with the elect for what would be the millennial reign, the Sabbath rest. And so I think that Nimrod, was somehow influenced, got hold of, and was part of that, with the relationship with the Watchers, whether they're teachings or directly with the giant progeny, that it had somehow influence and was able to change him. And in whatever way that is, we don't get the exact details. And so I'm going to ask both of you, what do you think about Nimrod becoming Gibborim, and how that possibly could have taken place? Either one of you care to comment
Brett,
first?
you want to go first, Brett?
Okay. Yes, sure. Yeah, Nimrod is something I've studied ever since like day one, because for some reason, when I started to try to learn more and more over the years, I started studying things after my father died, and that was 30 some years ago. It was a while ago. And just because I didn't want to end up like him, okay, in his position. He's very sick, But as I was studying and just learning, I was first learning about the psychology and the human mind, et cetera, how not to react and not to get stressed, et cetera. But they all started to go in the direction of something deeper, something spiritual, something of the supernatural. And Nimrod was one of the first things that kept coming up, and I kept finding his name out. Because so obviously he was a pretty powerful figure back then. How I believe he came there, and again, this is hard research because I tried to just make it all make sense. Again, Occam's razor. I believe that Cush was not actually the son of Ham. I believe that, and again, there are sources that I'm not sure if it's in Legends of the Jews, but they talk about Ham bringing a pregnant wife to Noah and saying, I need to bring her aboard because I'm in love with her, but she was seduced by one of the fallen angels. And Noah was very reluctant to do that. And he allowed, like he said, he allowed Og and maybe Sihon probably to get on board on the top of the ark because God did not he only wanted a certain number of people, etc., or whatever. He wanted what he wanted aboard the ark. But Noah, probably, in my opinion, allowed Ham's pregnant wife to go aboard the ark. Okay. And then I don't know if you ever heard about that story where Noah put the shavings in between them because they were not supposed to sleep by each other, husbands and wives. They're supposed to sleep separately while they're aboard the ark because it was a time of death and a time of sadness and mourning, and God did not want people to have pleasure during that time. It was just like a remembrance. You're supposed to sit somber during this time because people are dying. So, but Ham had to find a way to make it look like he was the father, so he snuck across and he was walking on those shavings, and obviously he got exposed because somebody's footprints were on there. So long story short, when Cush being actually a child, a progeny of one of these angels that actually, because they were going around trying to seduce people, especially in this close-knit family of Noah, so they can get their own progeny aboard. Because again, that's the only way that they could perpetuate their seeds and have some sort of immorality between them, because they knew they were going to die. But of course, people find immorality in their immortality in their children if they can pass on a child. So that's what they are desperate to do. They're desperate to get seed aboard that ark so they can somehow live forever in their children. So I believe Cush was actually an evil descendant of one of these. And he went the wrong path, and that's a lot of the reasons why he had such knowledge and he had such abilities. He could teach people of religion, etc. And when it came down to fathering Nimrod, he already had that seed within him. Okay, I didn't know about Semiramis because I heard, again, she was a prostitute. I've heard when he met her, but I personally believe that this must have been a very powerful angel that seduced Ham's wife. And the reason I believe that is because I don't think the lesser angels, the Nephilim, the ones that the fallen ones when they bred with people, with human women, the giants, and a lot of genetic issues would happen, okay? Because they're not as highly ranked. But you get these higher ranked ones, like the serpent himself, very, very highly ranked angels, okay? And when they would breed with their children, with the human women and have children, their progeny didn't have a lot of these genetic issues right off the bat, at least, because Cain, and again, that's my observation. I don't believe Cain was a giant. Some people say he does, and I believe maybe he was a giant of character or well known, just like they talk about Shem and Noah being giants. I just take that this could have referenced them as a giant of abilities and understanding and knowledge and character. So I don't think Cain was a giant per se, because of course he could have been if he was right, a progeny directly from the serpent. But I believe, again, since the serpent was so highly ranked, he wasn't tall and he wasn't big, just like Cush. And I believe, like I said, a powerful, even Shamhazi, I heard it's rumored, according to the research, actually got Ham's wife. And Cush, again, I don't hear any talk or any mention of Cush being a giant. But as you go down the line and Cush starts to mate and starts to have progeny, Nimrod comes out and he's a giant, because, again, this is more imperfection coming the more you have children down the lines of these offspring. That's my take on it. Make sense, or is it kind of wild?
No, I'd like to get your resources on that. That's
okay. I could give it to you. Yeah, there's plenty of them.
Heard that view before.
Go for it.
No.
Sorry.
I'm sure it took you a while to do all that research and to come up with that. That's very interesting. I know that from Zen's teaching, from his book, the garments of power was passed down from Cush to Nimrod, and so whoever would wear, it's your very first Superman in Clark Kent situation, right? I mean, or whatever.
Uh-huh.
I mean, go in the phone booth, put on the garments of power, and next thing you know, you're Wonder Guy, Nimrod, the massive hunter. And so, but I've never heard of the fact that Ham was not. Oh gosh. Well,
not the father of Cush.
Not the father of Cush. Yeah.
He was assumed the father. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where the genealogies come in again. And again, I have my concerns, because again, it's coming from the Masoretic text, and you got to ask yourself, okay, well, is this actually legit the way they translate it? I need to go into the Dead Sea Scrolls, go into the Septuagint, and check the Masoretic text. I actually would prefer to use them now instead of the Masoretic text. But again, it's starting from square one again, doing research. And so I'm open to all these suggestions on the topic, because, like that could be true. I'll
get you the sources. I'll get you the sources where I found that. It just takes a little bit, but I could find them. They're in the books.
Yeah. Interesting. Zen?
Yeah, of course, I want multiple witnesses as well, and the sources. But yeah,
okay.
Again, I don't myself, I don't know everything. I'm learning just like the rest of us, and so it's coming together in fellowship in this manner, sharing dialogue in the way that we are doing that. Learning about new possibilities, and so yeah, I never count anything out, and I, without a doubt, have great respect for Brett and his research. I've read a number of his books, and I know that he does, without a doubt, source everything that he comes to discernment on in similarity to what I do. That I like to share all of the ancient sources as well, and give all that to people for confirming witness. And then, I always ask people to doubt the things that I say, and to go forth and do their own research and prove things for themselves. It's the glory of God to conceal a matter, and the glory of kings to reveal it.
Yeah. Well, I know, Brett, when you mentioned that the giants, that Cain might not have been a giant, I've heard, again, Adam and Hava were very large to begin with, you know what I mean? And
I've heard that.
Yes.
And then it's progressively, they got smaller as the generations went down the line. And, so again, I'm not ruling out anything because, when God is in charge of doing things, sky's the limit. And when I say sky's the limit, I'm talking about the original Nephilim. It was mentioned there were 2,000 or 3,000 L, 2,000 L high, tall, 3,000 L high.
Yeah,
And you do a conversion. What was that conversion then? 2-point-something miles, 2.1 miles tall.
Yeah, and of course it's all on what you take to be a cubit. But yeah, from 2 miles to 450 feet. Either way, very, very large.
Larger than Goliath, right? So I mean,
right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You wanna know my take on it?
What's that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I try to be I just try to be Occam's razor. I try to keep it, what makes rational sense. I understand, and I've heard a lot about that being really tall and such. And I think could also the possibility, I'm asking you guys too, if you can just comment on this, but could the possibility that some of these narratives have been talking about maybe their closeness to God as like a reference? It's almost like a hypothetical reference of Adam as being very tall. In other words, my thought could this possibly be relating to how close he was to God, how tall he was, how close to heaven he was to God? Could that have meant something like that, or had a play on that, to like Adam and Eve before the fall, they were very, very close to God. In other words, they were touching the heavens, just like the Tower of Babel, was thought to touch the heavens, even though it didn't. I don't think it actually went that high, but I think in a sense is where you got a lot of divination and a lot of communication with spirits. So they believe that this tower, at the top of it, so they believe that this tower was something of close to heaven, is because they were so close to the spiritual or supernatural world. So I can't help but wonder, again, that's just my thoughts, okay, that's my opinion, but when they talk about Shem, Noah's son, gets a lot of references to how big, about that he's a giant of character and a giant, and Noah especially gets talked about he's tall and etc. But I kept thinking, okay, well, if he's giant like that, to me that just sparks something with the Nephilim, and something with that blood, and something with genetics that didn't work or something. So I know Noah had some of those qualities when he was young, but I don't think he had any bloodline. He was pure in his bloodline. Actually, it says that in the Bible. So could some of these things be actually talking, or maybe just people's inferences and perceptions of how giant of a character Noah was in the ancient world, how close to God he was, and the taller, that sometimes in certain comparatives is how close to God you are, is the taller or the higher you're pictured. Does that make sense? Or is that...
That's a possibility, Brett. But it's funny though. Like for me, when I get to heaven, one of the first people I want to talk to is Enoch. There was nobody closer to God than Enoch. But there's nowhere, and there's never mentioned that Enoch was a giant of a man or tall. I mean, but he was close to God, and yet, so that kind of tells me that he had that relationship, and that was really something awesome. He was never called a Gibor, a mighty man of God, with the term Gibor, but he was a man that did have a close relationship with God, and hundreds of thousands of men would follow him. I mean, they were sold that this guy knew God, much like the Watchers, who were
giants
judged.
too. Yeah.
Well, the Watchers were in prison, right? And he said, "Yo, Enoch, can you go to God and send him this letter for us, because we really want to get out of here, and we're sorry for what we did. We're repentant, and we just want another chance." And what does Enoch do? Say, "Okay, I'll do it for you." And God says, "No deal." You know what I mean? So, to me, Enoch is like the giant of all the historical legends in the Bible, and I really want to pick his brain, because what did he say? He said, "I want to know everything I can, God." And God sends his angel, and the angel says, "Why do you want to know all this?" "Because I do." I mean, he wanted to know God, and he wanted to know all about God. And so that's the heart of a man that is a giant in my eyes. But yet it was never mentioned that he was a giant or like a Gibor. So I don't know. I mean, there's arguments to and from, and there's no evidence of that part on Enoch. And yet Noah was the grandson of a great grandson of Enoch.
I think the
Great-grandson, yeah.
great-grandson.
And I mean, Noah's dad, Lamech, was like flipped out. It was like, whoa, what is this? No way, that's not from my loins, So, and who did he go to? Enoch, help me! I need your help, So, again, I think there are some times when actual size does come into play, and which is actually interesting because size intimidates. When you look at the size of a person, it's intimidating. You play basketball with a 7-footer. It's like, oh man, how can I get past this guy? The normal human being trying to, survive Nephilim hunger pains, when they're hungry, and they want to eat humans because there's no more food left. That's a scary thought, and yet they existed because they were gigantic and they could do that. They could grab whatever human they could and pop their head off, drink their blood, and then eat them off after that. It's kind of like going to McDonald's in a way, But so again, yeah, I know we can agree to disagree, and yet we don't know it all. Well, we can presume, right? So
yeah, we have we only have limited knowledge and limited bits of information, even though we get more and more, as this world and the internet and life goes on, especially with books and stuff we can find. But again, like you said, no, we can't get every single answer because people write things get destroyed. Alexandria, that whole library gets destroyed. I mean, there's a lot of things that either been put down or just dissolves away or lost. Like the book of Enoch was almost lost, because it was on purpose. So, it takes a lot. It takes a world of people trying to keep things and keep it going. That's important.
And of course, with the help of God, God saying,
absolutely,
I'm gonna make sure I save this scroll right here.
Yes.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, my take is different, and I have covered and written about this extensively. But in the Gospel of Bartholomew and in other sources, it is mentioned that Adam was a very, very tall stature and large in size, so much so that he was said to be 90 feet tall, or 90 cubits, or whatever it is. He was claimed to be very, very tall. And then when you look at the first 10 generations of humanity, we see that they lived very much longer lifespans. And then also, with regard to the construction, all the megalithic, and I'm not saying that all of that was done by Adam and Eve or even the generations of humans. Of course, I know that a lot of that was from the antediluvian times and dated Adam and Eve. However, I do believe that the statures, that they were larger in size, and that all of them would be what we would consider to be giants in this day and age. And I do believe that, before the flood, and it tells us that God says that he's going to reduce the lifespan and the statures. And we see a reference in 2nd Esdras as to how humanity has been reduced in size and stature. And also the other thing with regard to the story, I had interviewed Jonathan Gray a long time ago. He's I don't know if he is still around, but he was an archaeologist that went and wanted to confirm the work that Ron Wyatt had done when they had discovered what was Noah's Ark. And he went to confirm and did look at and examine, but there was a grave said to be from Noah's wife. And also they had dropped, all of those anchors, and these anchors were huge. I mean, large boulders. But Noah's wife, the grave had been there, and somebody had dug up the bones, and even her stature, that she was said to be 14 feet tall with regard to the bones that they had discovered. And I don't know, I wasn't there, I didn't see, but he did speak about and confirm this and shared it in the interview that I did with him. But even Shem, after Noah, he lived 600 years, and by the time of Abraham, he lived to be 175 years, and the whole theme of the lifespan of man being reduced to 120 years, that was fulfilled in Moshe, because Moshe was 120 years when he died and passed away. And so I do believe that the statures of the first 10 generations, that they were a very much larger size, and their lifespans also reflected a significant difference in that even the giants that were before the flood and that were preserved, Og and Sihon, they were of very large stature. We see that in the story in Jasher of the Moshe and the fighting against the Amalekites and all of that Og was said to be of huge stature. And in a lot of the ancient traditions, it speaks about humanity being of large size. And even in that book, The Travels of Noah, it also speaks about Noah being of a bigger stature. And so who knows for any certainty, but I do believe there was a significant difference between the first 10 generations of humanity and what we see as far as humanity now. And that, the lifespans are continually being reduced. And now a generation is said to be 70 years, 80 in strength, according to Psalms 90:10. But and then as far as we see the giants, that of course they were very much larger in stature, and they were said to be very much huge, as tall as the cedars. But even the giants after the flood, they were smaller, and they were but they were still what we would consider to be giants. But however, again, the even the giants were reduced, and their lifespan in the book of Enoch, it says that their lifespan would be reduced to 500 years after the flood. And so just things to consider. But
very interesting I like it.
So anything else as far as any questions? If y'all saw any questions in the chat or anything that you want to bring up specifically before the end of the show, or concerns, questions, anything. We've got about 20 minutes remaining.
Yeah, Brett, this is your topic, man. I mean, this is your show with Zen.
Well, I could start the last chapter of The Way of Cain if you guys want. I think keep it going if you'd like, or else if you want.
Yeah, bring up whatever you like, brother.
Okay. The last chapter of the first volume, and the volume is called The Rise of Mystery Babylon, The Way of Cain. And how I divided the first two volumes is, one is more of a cultural, socio-political, actually no political on this one, but mainly just cultural elements of the past and their parallels to the future, to now, okay? And the next volume, The Tower of Babel, gets into a little deeper. I talking about how these elements of culture were infused into the government and how they made laws out of them and how the religious authorities made laws out of them. And Noble, that's where you get a lot of your traditions and etc. from those religious authorities back then, trying to manipulate the word of God and etc. into what they believe. This is right up your alley, because
right.
That is basically, again, when we get into more of the political or religious corruption that goes on in the world via Mystery Babylon. And when I talk, and I'm just gonna this is gonna be the last chapter of this volume, which is more of a cultural look at things. And basically, it's going to be the look at Cain, because in my view, according to the research, Cain was probably one of the biggest proprietors of a lot of this corruption that we see in our culture. Okay. And again, when you talk about Jude, and I will be talking about Jude later on and probably next month when I finish this last chapter, but that talks about, they have gone in the way of Cain. So one of the few times Cain is mentioned outside of Genesis, like there's like 3, I think, but that is one in Jude. And it's interesting. Okay. He hasn't gone in the way of a lot of other different, let's say, nemesis in the Bible. They have gone in the way of Cain. So in my view, Cain and what happened back then with, even before the murder of Abel and after, and a lot of things that he did is very relevant and is very functional to what we see today and how things have turned out. So your comments on that? Is that Noble? Your thoughts on Cain?
I fully agree.
Okay.
Noble?
So go ahead, Noble.
No, that wasn't me. That was Zen.
Okay. So the whole reason when we talk about Mystery Babylon to begin with, and that's Revelation 17:5, is that it seems to be a corruption that has started way back in the garden, obviously, because if we have the seduction of Eve with the serpent, their progeny is Cain. So you have Cain again being a central witness to so much of what's going on. And I'm talking about the other side, okay? I'm not talking about anything that's righteous or godly. I'm talking about knowing thy enemy, okay? That's important because we need to know what we're up against. So that's a lot of these books are about becoming more knowledgeable in what we're facing. Because if we don't know what we're facing, it's very easily to get succumbed by a lot of the world around us. So this helps us to become, the more sharp we are, the better Christians we are, in my opinion, because we do have more of a solid foundation to stand on, okay? So that's why understanding, again, the past and how Jesus said, as it was in the days of Noah, we'll understand what's going on today and why things that we may be practicing or listening to might not actually be kosher, might not actually be the right ways, even though they might sound good. You got the love, you got the peace, you got all these things that they talk about. But again, when you read that Second Thessalonians, I believe they talk about, oh yeah, they will scream out for peace and safety, but then sudden destruction will come upon them. So we just have to kind of be cognizant of these things that we were being fed. And I hate to say it, but especially in a lot of our churches today, that's what kind of got me a little despondent about going every week, is because I see that so much has settled into them just for the sake of political correctness and trying to make things sound good for everybody. I mean, paganism is out there, and again, nothing against pagan people or whatever, but the whole concept of paganism, I believe, actually came from way back right after the Garden of Eden. And paganism is actually defined as whatever's not really of the God of the Bible, whatever religious beliefs are not from that God. Okay, you've got, again, to each his own. You practice it, that's fine. You do whatever you want, but we got to understand that paganism is seen to God in its crosshairs, okay, and anything that is of God. That's why you see so much against God nowadays, and against Judeo-Christian values, and against it, and the government and everything. You see that. So the whole concept here of what I'm trying to talk about in this book, in this volume, The Way of Cain, has to do with, okay, we talked about it in the past. We talk about Cain in the past. Now, how can we see some of the way he would promote, some of his characteristics, some of the ways that he would act back then in people around us today in general? And I do believe that is a big yes. And a couple of verses that are actually in the New Testament do seem to stand out, and they give us a lot of revealing things. And I'm going to actually get into probably this next month when we talk more, but at least for now, I wanted to just basically kind of break down a few things, because when the Bible speaks of mysteries, Mystery Babylon, we talk about mysteries of something that we're not quite sure of. Okay, they're a little subtle beneath the surface of our understanding, and that's how we're being fed a lot of things. That's why that's the mystery part of Mystery Babylon. And the Babylon part is Babylon was once the tower or the city that was actually built by Cain and some of the fallen Nephilim, according to the research, before the flood. Okay, and it was Babylon. So Ba is the gates, and Bel is actually the god Bel, and the god Bel in ancient times can be traced all the way back to the serpent himself. So Cain was actually dedicating this city built by his fellow Nephilim as the first great city who's trying to contrast all of what God wanted for the world, and he dedicated it to his father, the serpent himself. Okay, again, we have a city, we have a lot of hard bricks, cement, whatever you call it, like rocks building. And God wanted people to live more into tents and live more closer out towards nature outside. But of course, Cain wanted to take it the opposite direction. So that's what we have a lot with this when Revelation talks about Mystery Babylon. That's exactly what it means, in my opinion, is that it's the subtle ways of Cain's Babylon and all that got manifested and became great in that area. Not great in a good sense, but great in a bad sense. That's why another reason why I believe that the Bible talks so much about Babylon, even in Jeremiah and all these. And Babylon was, again, it eventually became dust, but the spirit of Babylon is still there with us, and hence the name of the book and what is important. Do you guys want to say anything before I go on? Or you want to keep going? You guys want to make some comments? Sure.
Yeah, I was just going to say, without a doubt, as far as, with regard to Babel and that connection, we see that they were not able to work the soil as well, that the children of Cain, the serpent seed, they could not farm, they could not grow their own food. And that was one of the curses that had come upon them. And so they developed cities as a way to utilize the labor of other people and to live off that and to have others work for them. And then they also created weights and measures, money, currency. We see also that, in the primary Adamic literature, that they were the ones that set up bars and were taught as far as musical instruments, that they created taverns and brothels and all that kind of stuff, that they were led by the serpent, their father, to do these kind of things, and weapons of war. All these things are also mentioned in the book of Enoch, that the watchers had, delivered a lot of this knowledge, even that of abortion and the painting of their faces, the dyeing as far as clothes, all kinds of stuff.
Carnival, right? Pretty much a carnival.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Amusements.
Party
Music.
Atmosphere.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure you guys know, but and another thing that's interesting to me is that we talk about, let's say, the sensual aspects of the Garden of Eden. What do you think that the pagans, especially I'm talking about the witchcraft pagans, the ones that are very much into it, the god and the horn god and the goddess, those type of things. The great rite of that paganism is actually the sexual experience. So again, it's kind of like a throw it in your face God celebration, in my opinion, of what happened at the garden, and what set humanity free and away from God is what is being celebrated here as the great rite, the great ritual, which is, it's just fascinating because again, you wouldn't have all these connections if there was no serpent seed or understanding of what Genesis 3:15 really means.
Right. And it's still that way. Satan still uses sexual perversion as part of his attraction into Satanism. Because, even when the watchers came down, it says that, in the Kever Nagas, that they saw the daughters of Cain engaged in basically a huge sexual orgy. And they still perform and have that involved in those satanic rituals and that religion. You see it in the Church of Satan and all of that, that, the nudity and the abomination as far as sexual perversion, that's very much incorporated into the religion of Satan.
It hasn't changed that much.
No.
Right.
Noble, do you want to comment, brother?
Yeah, Noble.
Gosh, I see the Garden of Eden as, again, one of the places where God met with his divine counsel. And so, and yet Hasatan had access to it, I guess being, he had a special pass or something. But yeah, I'm sure that what he saw what God was doing, he wanted to replicate. And so high places are a must for these rebellious gods as well. And that's why you have, churches covering high mountain peaks and whatnot that have portals and all that. And so, in a sense, Hasatan being the great deceiver as well as the copycat of them all, made his own so-called garden or high place of worship, much like God's, and like you said, Brett, probably had all the ways of the world happening in there, especially with the sexual rites and practices, the curses, everything that is not of God was being done there on their mountaintops, versus God's holy mountaintop. So yeah, I agree. That's not far from the truth.
A lot of imitation going on there when they talk about mountains, because of course, you have, wasn't it Elijah that had the princes of Baal? Okay, let's you have your sacrifice, and then let me have my sacrifice, and because they do a lot of imitating too. It's it's like a lot of times they will mimic and they will do a lot of the same thing that a godly person would. Again, sacrifices and high mountaintops. Okay, you want to be high mountaintops near God. Moses would go up to the mountain. They do the same. They believe a lot of that same things, but it's twisted. It's not quite godly. It's just the direction of worship goes into another sphere.
Yeah, it's perverted.
That's what perverted is, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, brothers, we have about 7 minutes remaining, so I want to give you both a chance to, share and wrap up, final comment, anything else that you'd like to bring up before we end this.
Well, great job, Brett, again on presenting your
you too.
Your book, The Way of Cain. I'm gonna read more of it now that I've been teased with the different scenarios that you've brought forth. I definitely want to look at that. I do want to make comment though. We're talking to Justin and Joy, Lisa and I. We're talking to Justin, Joy, and Kaylee. We're talking about the conference coming up. I just want to make a plug that, guys, if you go to sacredwordpublishing.com, you can actually register and reserve your rooms for the conference. It's going to be a great venue. It's going to be fun times. Guess who's leading the icebreakers? Yours truly. Yeah. And then I am out of the box, man. You guys will definitely have some fun.
Master of ceremony.
Yeah, that's right. That too. But you know what? I definitely look forward to seeing a lot of the people in the chat there. I mean, again, I got to meet Clark and Shay and Tammy and Terry Todd, and there's just a whole host of people there that I didn't even know as well. And so looking forward to meeting all the same faces and yet also meeting new faces. Brett, that's where we met you for the first time as well. So,
yeah.
And Zen in person. I mean, we've talked to you a lot, but to meet you in person. So again, just at the plug, it's going to be next year in April 12 and 13. April 12 and 13, 2025. Start making your plans, start saving your money, and make that reservation. There is I think we're having a group discount for the conference as far as renting the rooms. So take advantage, get your rooms before they're all sold out. And that's my plug for today. Good job again, Brett and Zen.
Thank you. Good job, Noble. Thank you
for
contributing to this discussion. Very good. Okay. What I want to do, it gives a little plug to Noble and I. Isn't it next week, Thursday? We think we have a new show, or at least a new presentation going on around the same time. I think it's at 9:00 Eastern, right?
Yeah, with Zen. Yeah, with Zen.
Mm-hmm.
With Zen, we're meeting with you next week, Zen.
Yes.
Yeah, and this time
Thursday, same, right?
Is it right? Is it this Thursday, next Thursday then? Okay, yeah. So we have Zen and us three again, and this time we'll be talking a little bit more about. Do we have that new name, Noble? Is that Yah's second?
Yah's second armor.
Shield?
Yah's second armor.
Yeah. So we're gonna. Yeah, we're gonna get
the first
into,
armor. The first armor is spiritual. The second armor is physical, right?
Right. So we're gonna get into more of things that can protect us, hopefully, and ways to live, ways to protect us, I believe, in a godly light from a lot of the harm that can come to us in the world, especially today, whether it be nutrition, whether it be just frame of mind, EMFs, and different kind of issues that might be affecting us every day that we might not know about. So I think that'll be hopefully it'll be pretty informative, and Noble's got quite a bit of knowledge about EMFs and such. So I think that'll be good. That'll be next week, right?
Yes.
Next week on a Thursday. And I'll be back, and hopefully with Zen's blessing, and continue on with that last chapter next. I think it's the last Thursday of next month. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I look forward to that as well. Definitely.
Yeah, I really enjoy, being on with you guys and sharing time and space, and everybody in the chat also. And yeah, thanks for bringing up the conference, and please do. That it's going to be at the Great Wolf Lodge in Dallas, Texas, April 12th through the 13th. And one final thing with regard to the mystery grab bags. I did sign a bunch of other new books and a bunch of hardbacks. So we are, again, those that are interested in purchasing what remains of the inventory, it's mostly gone. So I think probably just a couple more weeks for that. But you have the opportunity to get, autographed copies and hardbacks, even autographed. And so those of you that would reach out and get them while you can. That's just a mystery grab bag of different books. And Justin is taking into consideration your previous purchases and possible inventory. And so you can find those at sacredwordpublishing.com, as well as all of Brett's books and all the things that we've been talking about, Noble's and Lisa's and the EMF blockers and her books. Lots of stuff and lots of information to be found there at sacredwordpublishing.com. But again, we appreciate all of you. I will just ask that the Most High continue to watch over, to bless, protect, and keep us all safe in these strange and uncertain times, and that we are blessed also with the discernment to go forth, to sound the shofar, to bring forth warning. And one last thing I wanted to make mention, I did a recent guest appearance with the Tinfoil Hat Crew, and I'll have to share that in the chat. But the show went really well. So just look up
good.
Tinfoil Hat Crew and Zen Garcia, and you should be able to find that. And I'm gonna post it on this channel. I just want to get, approval from them before doing that. And we again appreciate you guys, and I'll see you next week. And everybody in the chat, thank you. We'll see you next week as well. And Saturday, actually, for the Digital Readers Club. We love all of you.
Yes.
Zen, real quick. So
ahead,
we're able to get tickets for the hotel coming. As far as is there any discount or anything for the hotels?
You'll have to check the website. I do. Noble mentioned.
Lisa mentioned that there's a group discount for the rooms. So They're giving it to us because we're anticipating so many people coming out there. And this is Lisa's work. I'm just echoing what she's saying. So,
any teasers on? Go ahead. Any teasers on anybody who might be showing? Might be coming?
Not yet. We'll be doing all that very soon. But all these things are above my pay grade. I'm the low man on the totem pole. So
I'm just a janitor. I know nothing.
I know nothing. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I just get led. Go here. I do what Joy tells me. So
go there, and everybody loves you, right? Okay. How does that work?
I hope so. Anyways, not everybody. I got a lot of haters and detractors out there, but
Well, not at that conference. Not in that conference.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, be blessed. Good night, all.
Thanks, Zen.
Hello.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thanks,
See you next week, hopefully, next month.
Yeah, absolutely.
God bless you guys.
Bye.
Love you all.
God bless you all. Bye-bye.
Have fun in paradise, Noble.
I'll take pictures of the traffic and send it to you, okay?
Okay, that'll make me feel better.
And all that EMF you got out there, Noble, too, huh?
Oh,
shucks,
yeah.
All right,
Shalom,
good night,
guys. Love you all.
Shalom.
All right.
Thank
you, everybody, for coming. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this video and this broadcast. We appreciate all of you and thank you for your patronage. Please do like and subscribe and share with your friends. God bless all of you in your seeking.